Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I knew it was them. I knew it was them all along.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss Them, which released in 1954. Based on a story by George Worthing Yates, a screenplay by Ted Sherdman and Russell Hughes, and directed by Gordon Douglas. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Well, in some deserts in America, some people have started to go missing. And as the police are investigating, they realize that giant mutant ants have started to kill their way across America. While the scientists try to figure out how to stop them, the army must seek and find and destroy all of the ant queens before they make too many nests.
Man, I was super excited to see this film pop up on the list to do. This is an absolute classic and an absolute favourite of mine. I remember my dad introducing me to this film, and from the opening sequence where the title bursts up on screen in blood red, and the music swells up, and that haunting looking tree on the side. It's just like, I'm in, and I've always remembered this film fondly. Some people even compared this or said that this is a direct inspiration for James Cameron's Aliens. Ooh, I'm like, well, it kind of makes sense why I love both movies so much. But yeah, I didn't realize that this film was meant to be in full color.
Yeah, I read that, yeah.
This film was also meant to be in 3D. But the studio head, Jack Warner, just kind of got cold feet on the project and was just like, cut the budget some more. No 3D, no color. You can have a color title and that's it. And it's just like, oh. But it's kind of surprised that they kind of lost a little bit of faith in it and took the budget away. And also it meant that they didn't get the big stars in there that they wanted. They didn't get the big special effects team in there that they wanted. But I still think that the people behind making this film, they saw the budget drop, but they still committed to this 100%. I think that's why this film has still remained in pop culture even to today.
Well, I mean, that's it. This one is an absolute classic. And, 1950s America, their cinema was just trying to hit out as many nuclear, atomic, apocalyptic, radiation, mutant kind of movies that you could.
Well, I think this one was probably one of the first ones, at least one of the most successful, earliest ones, which then caused, a trend of B movies that would then try to emulate this one.
Well, that's it. You just had this idea of atomic power doing all this magical stuff, like I remember Forbidden Planet was my first gateway in before I watched them, where, they're using atomic power to power their ships and fly through space and all that kind of stuff. But I think what worked for them as well, that a lot of other 50s sci-fi movies failed to do, was sometimes less is more. And with some of the classic sci-fi movies, like, I don't know, I'm thinking like Beast of like 50,000 Fathoms. When that creature turns up, it looks great, but it's a plasticine monster moving around. And the ants in this movie aren't amazing, like when we do see them. But I love this initial build-up, this idea, you've got these two police officers, New Mexico State Police, driving along. They're following this helicopter that's searching the desert, and the pilot of the helicopter finds this little girl. She's just wandering. And the two police officers, they pick her up. One of them, Sergeant Ben Peterson, played by the legendary James Whitmore.
Hell yeah. Awesome actor.
Shawshank Redemption, The Relic, here he is. He's got a bit of weight on him, looks a bit more, full it out. But he and his partner, they find this little girl, and she's absolutely catatonic. She's just staring. Whatever she has seen, is absolutely scared. And I've got to give the little actress credit.
Oh yeah, she's fantastic. She's really shells this trauma that she's been through.
Yeah,
she is absolutely catatonic.
Yeah,
and but I do also like there's a little bit of humanity in Ben Peters, the James Whitmore character, who's kind of comforting her, trying to talk to her, and he takes her with him in the cop car.
Yeah,
and when they drive to where they think that little girl had come from, he kind of, gently puts her down in the seat as he's getting out. And I was like, they didn't need to do that. But they showed that moment. I was like, that's a nice little bit of humanity there. It also immediately warms you then to this character as he's starting his investigation. And, we find this demolished trailer, which has been pulled apart on one side. And they also find some weird marks in the sand. Yeah. So call in the forensics team. We got the guy doing the plaster to try and get a print for it. Yeah. They're looking at fingerprints. They're trying to figure out what's going on. And they realize all the sugar's gone. Yeah. And there's a bit of sugar remaining. It's like...
But there's no other bodies. They can't find the adults that are supposedly the parents for this small child. She's hidden away from something.
I mean, it's kind of grim because really, like, that little girl's just lost her mother, her father, and her other sibling. So 3 people have literally just died here. Yeah. But yeah, like you said, there's no bodies.
There's no bodies. And it's when they go to the nearest general store as well, and they find that the general store has been absolutely demolished. And I absolutely love this sequence because you have the 2 cops there. They're wandering around. You've got the wind blowing. Night's coming. And it's funny that you brought up Aliens earlier because this sequence made me think of Aliens while I was watching it, while they're moving around the colony.
It was also the fact that the little girl, the sole survivor, being rescued.
Yeah, and they come across the shop owner's body in this hole. Something has crawled out from this hole, attacked this shop, and gone after the sugar again. Pounds, kilograms of sugar has just disappeared. And then they do an autopsy on the man's body, don't they? They realise that his ribs have been crushed, his arms have been crushed,
And he's been pumped with an acid that would kill 20 men.
Yeah.
Well, old man Johnson could have died in any one of 5 ways. His neck and back were broken, his chest was crushed, his skull was fractured, and here's one for Sherlock Holmes. There was enough formic acid in him to kill 20 men.
Before that, though, there was another sequence I quite liked where the little girl kind of sits up in the back of the ambulance.
Yes.
Because they hear this weird chirping noise out in the desert.
Yeah.
They don't see anything, but they hear it. I'm like, that's very effective. It's alerting you as the audience to the danger as well as the characters. And it's done very well, especially that she responds to that. Yeah. Where she hasn't responded to anything so far.
Yeah, yeah.
And going back to the general store scene, it's, Sergeant Ben Peters leaves his partner there. Yeah. And I think this is one of the greatest moments in the film where he hears that chirping sound again outside on top of that howling wind.
Yes.
So it's like this sequence is oozing atmosphere and tension. Yeah. It's got perfect lighting and shadows. And I love that he just turns the light off. He moves forward, turns the light off. He's got his gun and he goes outside. You hear the gunshots go off. Then the scream. Yeah. Off screen. And that's it. I was like, that was fantastic. Like, the film has set everything up. We've not seen the monster. We've heard it. And now 4 people are already dead. Yeah. 5 people even.
And this is the thing as well. This is what I love about this type of classical movie is that when you don't have that much, when your studio itself has cut your budget, you're relying on your actors to deliver the believability of the story that they are trying to act out.
That's it. They take it very seriously. They're not kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Isn't this kind of goofy and silly?
And that's it. We know that the special effects of whatever creature we're going to see aren't going to be great because it's the 1950s. They didn't have great special effects. So we are relying on the actors delivering the idea that whatever we are going to see is absolutely terrifying. So when they introduce FBI agent Rob Graham, played by James Arness.
The thing from another world.
The thing from another world. The fact that he's come off the back of The Thing, that had been out years before, but he was covered in makeup. He didn't have many lines of dialogue. The guy is tall. Yeah. There's a couple of sequences I saw him kind of kneeling on things just to get himself in shot, so he's encompassed in the shot of everything else. But we're also introduced to Dr. Harold Medford, played by Edmund Gwenn, and his daughter, Dr. Patricia Medford, played by Joan Weldon. And these 2 guys have been called in to investigate, what has happened to these people that have been killed at these sites. And Dr. Harold, he kind of already has an idea.
but he doesn't want to say it out loud. Like, I think you might be dealing with giant mutated ants. So if I say it, you'll think I'm crazy. So I'm just going to keep it to myself until I can prove what I think.
Yes.
And that carries on for about 10 minutes or so. And I like it because the FBI agent, he's just like, well, just please tell me what's going on here. We're on the same team. Just tell me. And it's not until I'm working on my hypothesis.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I love the sequence as well when they're flying around in the planes to try and find these holes.
Yes.
And he's got the radio and he's like, you've got to say over. Why do I have to say over? She knows I've finished saying what I'm going to say. Now you've got to say over and out. And he's like, what the I was like, so not only is this guy probably the smartest guy here, but he's also the funniest as well. So I like that contrast. And of course, like in my memory, I always remember James Whitmore. He was my favorite. But watching it today, I was like, meh.
The scientist
is my favorite character now. But I also love his relationship with his daughter in the film because you feel the sort of fatherly energy with him, with his daughter, but at the same time, they're very professional.
Yeah.
He calls her doctor. He introduces her to the others as doctor, not like, this is my daughter, but he does. But I just love that very professional relationship, and I just thought it was an interesting twist on the film as well.
I really like the sequence where they're out there and they find the hole.
Yeah.
And they're having to go into the hole to obviously investigate it. And so you've got Ben Peterson and Rob Graham ready to go in there with flamethrowers and machine guns. They're your action hero types that we're going to be following. If we don't call in the army, these two guys are going to save the day.
It's like, where do the police get these flamethrowers and Tommy guns? Like, just keep them in the car?
It's the 50s, man. It was a rough time.
But I gotta say that before they get to that whole sequence, there is the first reveal about 28 minutes into the film.
Yeah.
Where Dr. Patricia is sort of, she's away from the others, and the ant appears right up over her.
Yeah.
Towers over, and she kind of, classic, style horror. She kind of falls over and screams. But I mean, I think anyone would. The giant ant leering right over you like that. I was like, that was a fantastic reveal shot. Like the sound, the image of it coming over, and you say like the special effects are kind of bad or a bit goofy, but I think in that, I think in some shots it looks okay, but it's the shot a bit later on where you see the ant out in the open with the rib cage in its mandibles, and I'm like,
yeah, that was fun.
Is that on a string? Like,
but the idea as well that while this ant is trying to attack Dr. Patricia, her father is just like, aim for the antennas. Aim for the antennas. That'll disorientate and that should stop the creature. And so it's pretty much bulletproof up until the fact that they start shooting the antennas, and then it actually gets taken down.
Interestingly as well, though, this is the only ant in the movie that has dramatic death sounds as it's dying. They decided after editing, like, we're not going to add any more sound effects to the ants dying because it just sounds horrible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not horrible because the sound was horrible because, like, oh my god, we're killing these giant ants.
But it's the idea as well, like I said, being the fact it's 1950s, you have to remember that ideas back then were very different than what they are to present day. And so when they do find this kind of hole, this nest, and they're having to go down and investigate it, Patricia puts herself forward. She says, look, I'm coming down with you guys. And FBI agent Rob Graham, he turns around, he's just like, no, we can't, there's no place for a woman to be down there. And you might sit there going, oh, you can't really say that, but this is 1954.
Yeah.
There was a time and a place for certain things. But it's the way her dad steps forward and says, look, I'm too old. I can't climb into that hole. I can't investigate half these things. You don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
She hasn't got the time to explain it to you.
Yeah.
So you have to go. So,
but she's pragmatic, she's scientific, and she's absolutely right as well. And so she absolutely should be going down there.
I mean, like I said, I don't mean to diss the special effects of the ants. I mean, the ants are what they are. They've got 6 legs and big buggy eyes and things like that. I do think it's, you're basically burning money the moment you get this really cool model out, and then you're like, get the flamethrower.
Yeah. Burn it!
Burn it!
Apparently they only built 3 of them, and that's why you only ever see 3 of them on screen at once.
Oh, kind of like Invaders from Mars,
exactly.
Where they only had one at a time.
Very limited budget, so yeah. So it does make me wonder, like, because they do burn quite a few of them. So I don't know. But yeah, I do like that they find that ant mound, and then they're firing phosphorus grenades at it and setting fire to it, because they come up with a conclusion that all of the ants they come out when it's cooler, so during the heat of the day they'll all be in the nest, so set a big fire around the nest, and then drop in some gas in there, gas out the whole nest, and then let's go in to make sure the queen is dead.
I gotta admit, I love that tunnel sequence where they came down, and it was just, I mean, models of the ants everywhere, but obviously you got the idea that they've wiped out this nest. These are dead ants walking around, and Patricia's looking around, and she sees the empty kind of egg casings, and she realizes then that actually there has been queens born and they've moved off. And so, like, for me, Them has always been a film of two parts. The first part is establishing the creatures and finding out what they are and what they've been doing. And now it's the chase sequence. These creatures have actually left the desert now, and they're planning on spreading. So the fear is that if they start to make more nests around the world, the ants are going to just wipe out humanity.
That's right. Dr. Harold gives the very chilling, like, biblical speech about how humanity has caused its own destruction with the atomic bomb drop causing these mutations. And it's just like, wow. So then that's when the military gets involved, the government gets involved.
Yeah.
They start putting out, they're like, we don't want to alert the public just yet. And the little telegram gets sent to one office somewhere. And I recognized the guy at first. I was like, but I need him to speak because I can't be quite sure. And it was Leonard Nimoy.
It was Leonard Nimoy, yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. But I do love there's this big board on the wall just saying all of these strange things to look out for, like flying saucers, if sugar and syrup has gone missing.
I love the fact as well, like, Dr. Harold doesn't once mention about actually trying to communicate with the ants.
No,
or creatures.
It's
literally just like, let's kill everything.
Exactly. It's a scientist, like, not to study, not to bring back, but to exterminate them. It's like, right.
You've already got Sergeant Ben Peterson, who's just adamant that he wants to kill all the ants because they killed his partner.
Yeah.
The FBI agent, he kind of wants to get with Patricia. So if she says that we've got to wipe out the ants, we've got to wipe out the ants. But I'm sat there like, okay, when did we all just start, like, wanting to make friends with every single creature, weird mutant thing that came along?
Now that the military's involved, they're pulling in people that may have seen or witnessed strange events, and they end up talking to these two drunk guys. They end up talking to this lady who was out seeing a friend.
Yeah, until early hours.
Yeah, and then they end up going to this psychiatric hospital where they've put this person, this pilot,
The pilot, yes,
who said he had seen UFOs and flying saucers. So Robert Graham and Patricia go there to talk to him, and the doctor's just like, oh yeah, I think he might be fine. He's probably fine. And they talk to him, and he's like, look, yeah, I saw UFOs, but they were shaped like ants.
Yeah.
You gotta believe me, right? You gotta believe me. Like, actually, we do believe you. Could you just tell us where that was? He tells them. And they're like, okay, don't worry, we're the government. We got you back. We'll talk to the doctors for you. He goes back out and talks to the doctor, and he's like, keep that man in there. He's clinically insane. Don't ever let him out. It's just like...
I just love that way of, like, we still got to keep this thing hush-hush.
Right.
So we're going to keep this man, who is absolutely innocent and is telling the truth, locked away.
It's like, man, even in the 50s, they got it right.
Well, at the same time, we've had a realization as well that one of the queen ants had landed on a ship.
That's right.
Or the ship had been in dock and it climbed into the hold, and then it's given birth to loads of ants, and then the ants have attacked the ship, and then the ship has actually been sunk.
It's a great moment when you see the guy on the SOS. He's sending you've got the guy doing the Morse code, and then you got the guy in the background being attacked and killed with the Wilhelm scream, and then the ant crashes through the windows as well.
Isn't that Wilhelm scream used like 3 times in this?
I think it's like 4 times even. It's a bit overdone, and it's really, really quite sad in a way, because the Wilhelm scream, when it pops up in other movies, you're like, yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, it immediately takes you out of it, but like when this film first came out and not many people had heard that Wilhelm scream, it kind of fit. But I hate the fact that it kind of adds a comedy kind of undertone just very so slightly to it now.
When I was younger, it freaked me out because, when I first saw this film, the Wilhelm scream wasn't as well known as it is nowadays. But I heard the first scream, and then I would hear the screams later on, and I remember thinking as a kid, like, how can they all sound the same?
Right.
Like, they can't sound the same as scream. It just sounded weird. But they've also, Rob Graham and Ben Peterson have come across the information that a dad has gone missing in the river of Los Angeles, which is right in the middle of the city, and his two sons are missing as well. So now it's kind of like a bit of a chase sequence towards the end of the movie where, you know, the good guys have to rescue these two children. There's a fear that they might have been eaten by the ants, or they might just be lost because the dad had his arm ripped off and things like that, and he tried to drive away. And so they head down into the river and they head to the tunnels, and they come to the realization that, oh, maybe the ants have gone into these tunnels.
Well, actually, I mean, they go to the hospital, don't they? Because they interrogate a guy who's been in there for like 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, the guy who wants to be put in charge. He wants to be sergeant of the booze.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
And he's the one who then tells them that he's seen some strange things coming in and out of those sewer drains. And so, yeah, that's what gives them the idea to then go down there. And that's when they find the toy plane that they were flying. And so they know that that's where they're going to be.
Yeah.
But then we get all of the action sequences, all the military driving through the town.
Yeah.
The curfew goes out. The declaration that everyone needs to be at home by 6 p.m.
Yeah.
You'll be arrested, and it's a danger to life. And well, the secret's out.
Yeah.
And it's an awesome thing where you see all these military guys, the Marines. I'm like, aliens again, you know, as they're going into the nest, into the tunnels. So this is great. This is really great.
They just start laying waste to practically everything that they come across. I mean, it's like you said, it is quite like Aliens at first because it's all really, really quiet.
Yeah, the tension.
They don't know what's going on. They don't know where these creatures are, and then all of a sudden they start coming through the walls.
Yeah,
they start having to shoot with them all over the place. And Ben ends up getting separated because he finds the two little boys in this room.
Yeah, because I mean, the children in the film has kind of an important part because he was the one who came across the girl and looked after her at the beginning, and she was the only survivor. And you know, the military were thinking about just carpet bombing and just destroying everything in the sewers.
Yeah.
But then he just, one of them just says, "Look, that's the mother over there. Do you want to go and tell her that we're giving up on our 2 kids?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Actually, no, we're not going to do that." So it was kind of, again, another human kind of moment in the film that it just elevates the material a little bit more. It makes you care, makes you believe it's real.
And I totally forgot about this ending where Ben, he gets the 2 children, he saves them from the ants, he burns the ant corpses, puts the 2 boys back up into the pipe that he'd climbed out of, and then he's attacked, and he's practically killed at that point. He doesn't die until the FBI
Graham
agent
does find him,
comes across and finds him, and Graham gets separated from his unit, and he gets a bit of a tight call, but then his unit digs through, and they shoot the crap out of a bunch of ants, which, you know, it's just maximum firepower from everybody.
Yeah.
Like, Graham's on his own just firing at once, but as soon as you get 4 or 5 guys all firing on one ant, it's like EDF all over the place.
Where's a pwn? Where's a pwn? And then the order goes, stop firing grenades, you're going to bring the whole nest down and separate them off. And then one soldier ends up getting crushed under some debris. Cue Wilhelm scream again.
Wilhelm scream as well.
I think Graham also has a Wilhelm scream at one point when the ants almost get him. But then they do eventually kill those ants, and they come across the nest, and they see the 3 queens down there, and we get the close-up of the flame units just torching the room. It's great.
It would have been cool if they'd done the 3D imagery.
You still, some of the shots in the film were set up for the 3D. But interestingly as well, nearly all of the actors that are wielding the flamethrowers in the movie are actually World War II veterans that served in the war that actually were flamethrower units.
Oh wow, nice.
So it's like, well, obviously, you know, health and safety and protection and all that, but at least they knew how to use the equipment. But it's super effective, and it's really damn cool.
And the film just ends on like one of those old school moral messages. You know, they've just wiped out the ants. Humanity has been saved. And
how many bombs have we dropped elsewhere?
Dr. Melford, he gives his last little speech of how many bombs have dropped, how many other things have been mutated. You know, is this the end of it, or are we going to see other things? And it just leaves like this shadow over the movie, like we've saved the day, but at what cost?
The title comes up saying the end, and there's no question marks. I'm like, okay, no, it's fine.
That's it. Well, American style, they killed everything. It's fine. We'll just go back to work tomorrow.
Well, it's been like 70 odd years, and they haven't remade it or made a sequel yet. So
they should totally.
I mean, the Starship Troopers, aliens.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been so many clones of them anyway, of varying degrees, but it's still an absolute classic in the pinnacle of the 50s. Of this genre, it's amazing. But Iain, what were your favourite scenes from them?
Oh man, like A lot of the sequences where they're having the fights with the ants, I think, are really, really good. I mean, I like the ant attack on the ship, even though it's only like a tiny little set. Like I said, these guys were given as much as they could acting-wise while dealing with furry-legged giant ant creatures. You know, you could see that some films could really suffer, but this had built up the suspense enough that when you saw the ants, you're like, oh, it doesn't look great, but hey, they killed them. Yeah, that's a really good job. I love the opening sequence, like I said, with the little girl, finding her, her sitting up in the back of the van, and then the initial, her screaming when they're questioning her about what she's seen. But when you balance like those sequences with the science and then the revelation of the ants, it's not the greatest sci-fi movie I'd ever say, but it's certainly one of those top tier 50s atomic age movies where scientists have no idea how to deal with these giant mutant ants, but you know what, to save the children, let's just burn them all. So yeah
yeah, I think the title card itself, it's very rare. That title card is my favorite sequence, but it's ingrained in my memory, them in bold red in that background, in the wind, in the music. It's just perfect. And then I really, really enjoy the first act of this film. I think it's fantastic. The rescuing of the girl, going to the where her family was brutally killed by the ants, and then going to the store. It's the general store sequence I really like. I love the atmosphere here. It's just chilling. It's built that tension up, and the death off screen, I really love it. That's definitely a favorite.
Yeah.
Going into the nest, like both times, the first time after they've gassed it and they're going in there and they're seeing the corpses, just the tension, it's just building, and every time you hear that noise that the ants are making. Now actually the sound effect has come from frogs.
Wow. Okay.
It's a chorus of bird-voiced tree frogs that make the ant sound, so but it's very effective.
It sounds like antennas to me.
Yeah. The boat attack sequence, and then of course the Wilhelm scream. I think that's the first time it's used. Yeah, but even though it's a small set, you get the established shot of the boat, and then you get that one shot of two guys being killed there and gunshots. You get the idea. Even though you don't see it, it sets in your mind that this carnage is going on all over this boat. So even just seeing a glimpse of it, I was like, it was enough, and that was the show. Just enough, just to feed your imagination, so you don't get all the close-ups. Because when you do get the close-ups of the ants, you're just like, no. And unfortunate because they couldn't really move very much. So,
but that's because they didn't have the budget.
Because the film sets up like they've got these stingers, and that's how the guy in the general store was partly how he was died with all the acid that he was injected with. But the ants never do it in the film. That's because they just they couldn't afford it, they couldn't animate it, and they didn't know how to. So it's kind of a shame, but it's still very effective. Ben Peters saving the kids and then ultimately sacrificing himself to save them, and it's kind of sad because he's not really given much of a send-off. I mean, granted, he kind of can't at that situation, but it's just like we've been following him from the beginning. He's the one who saved the kids, and he's the one who gets killed. It was like, yeah. And then I guess at least just the wall-to-wall, army or marines in with guns just blasting the ants. It's like, this is great. This is what cemented this film in my memory as a kid and has made me love it ever since.
Old school firepower to deal with the threat.
Hell yeah. And flamethrowers too. We don't have flamethrowers in movies, Ian. Ian, do you recommend them?
I do recommend them. I think it's classic cinema, 1950s, black and white, just I can see why people would be deterred from watching this style of film, but I also feel that this style of film is what cements cinema as it is nowadays that we know. Without movies like them to just push special effects and script writing and budget and studios to just keep trying to do more and more and more and more. This film, it's missing certain elements, but some of them that they get right, they get so good. Like we said, the little girl screaming them is just iconic for cinema. Yes, the ants aren't, CGI or blue screen or whatever. No, somebody actually had to construct that whole model, and then somebody else had to animate that model so it moved on screen for those few seconds, and then somebody had to actually act in front of that model and pretend that they were scared and terrified of this ant. It's classic cinema. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I'll die on that anthill.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm also highly recommending them. This is a great movie and a genre classic that influenced so many filmmakers and really kickstarted a whole subgenre of giant bug horror films and radioactive creatures. This film might have had its budget slashed, but the talent in front and behind the camera shaped and used what they had cleverly, taking the subject matter seriously, elevating the whole film. The special effects in the film are okay, They're perfectly fine for 1950s, and in some cases, I think they still look more convincing than some modern CGI creatures. But what makes these ants effective is the great direction of Gordon Douglas, using light and shadow and sound effects and tension to build that suspense before the big reveals. James Whitmore is great here. He's a real favourite of mine, and he gives the film those little touches of humanity that makes us care for him and those around him. Edmund Gwenn, though, is my real standout as Dr. Harold Medford for his serious approach to the role, while also serving as the comedic relief in parts, and I really liked his professional relationship with his daughter. I think it worked really well. The music, the sound effects, the action, the suspense, this film really delivers the goods, and I never get tired of seeing them. So this is a must-watch for genre fans. The sci-fi classic of the atomic age. Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.